The air in the house that Sunday was thick and lazy, the kind of stillness that amplifies every tiny whisper of sound. The gentle whir of the AC, the delicate sigh of leaves brushing against the window, and the persistent drip, drip of the bathroom faucet. A tiny annoyance I'd been meaning to tackle. Lost in the pages of a captivating book I finally had time for, the afternoon had been my sanctuary. Dad was off on his usual weekend errands, and my stepmom, Eleanor, was likely lost in the vibrant embrace of her beloved rose garden. The idea of a shower bloomed like a sudden treat, a chance to wash away the stickiness of the day. I adjusted the water until it was just right, a warm cascade promising pure relaxation. Stepping in, I closed my eyes, letting the steamy tendrils wrap around me like a comforting hug. Barely a few blissful minutes passed when a faint sound pricked the silence. A soft tap? No, gentler than that. I shrugged it off, the house settling, maybe Eleanor moving things in the kitchen. But then, the unmistakable creak of the bathroom door hinge. My heart did a little flutter kick against my ribs, and I froze under the warm spray. Had I locked it? I was almost certain, but the slow, deliberate opening of the door sowed a seed of doubt. Hello? Eleanor's voice, a soft melody against the drumming water, shattered my brief tranquility. A wave of heat washed over me, and I fumbled desperately for the towel, just out of reach. Eleanor, I'm in here. My voice trembled slightly. A pause hung in the air, and for a fleeting moment I hoped she'd retreat, realizing her mistake. But instead her voice returned, apologetic yet with an odd undercurrent of steadiness. Oh, darling, I'm so sorry. I just needed to grab the cleaning supplies. I had no idea you were in here. I heard her hesitant footsteps drawing closer. Through the frosted glass of the shower door, her silhouette was a blurred but undeniable presence. It's fine, I said quickly, clutching the towel around myself and frantically twisting the water knob. I'll be out in just a second. But she didn't leave. Instead, she lingered. No need to rush, she said softly, almost too softly. There was a curious note in her voice, something I couldn't quite decipher. I eased the shower door open a sliver, just enough to peek out. Her eyes met mine, and there was something in her expression that gave me pause. A blend of concern and curiosity, so different from the usual motherly sighs I was used to. Are you okay? She asked, her head tilting slightly as she studied me. I nodded, though a blush warmed my cheeks. Yeah, just caught off guard. A gentle smile touched her lips, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. I didn't mean to startle you, she said, taking a small step back but not fully retreating. I should have knocked. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The air between us thick with a strange, unspoken energy. I'll let you finish up, she said finally, her voice barely a whisper. She turned to leave, and a breath I hadn't realized I was holding escaped my lungs. But as she reached the door, she paused again, glancing back over her shoulder. You're growing up so fast, she said, her tone tinged with wistfulness. Sometimes I forget you're not my little girl anymore. Her words hung in the steamy air long after she'd slipped out of the bathroom. Dripping and wrapped in my towel, I stood there, replaying the odd encounter. What had just happened? The rest of the day drifted by in a hazy blur, Eleanor's wistful words echoing in my thoughts, stirring unfamiliar feelings. I tried to chalk it up to an awkward moment, something to bury under the usual Monday chaos. But the weight of her lingering gaze clung to me. By dinner, the house had settled back into its familiar rhythm. Dad was home, animatedly recounting some work triumph. Eleanor sat across from me, her composure serene and graceful. If the bathroom encounter had ruffled her, she certainly didn't show it. Everything all right, sweetie? Dad's voice cut through my thoughts. I blinked, realizing I'd been pushing my food around my plate. Yeah, I said, forcing a smile. Just a bit tired. Eleanor's eyes flickered to mine, a subtle acknowledgement that only I noticed. She's been lost in a book all day, she said lightly, smoothly covering for me. Must have been a real page-turner. I nodded, grateful for the save, even if it felt like a secret pact forming between us. Sleep was elusive that night. The house was quiet, but the silence felt heavy, oppressive. I tossed and turned, my thoughts a tangled mess. Finally, unable to bear the stillness, I slipped downstairs for a glass of water. The kitchen was bathed in the soft glow of the under-cabinet lights. I was halfway to the fridge when I saw Eleanor sitting at the island, a steaming mug cradled in her hands. She looked up, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. Couldn't sleep either? She asked softly. I shook my head. Just needed some water. She gestured to the empty chair beside her. Join me? I hesitated, then walked over, pulling out the chair and sinking into it. The tea in her mug smelled faintly of chamomile and honey. What's keeping you up? She asked after a moment. I shrugged, unsure how much to reveal. Just a lot on my mind. She nodded, her gaze drifting. Me too. For a while, we sat in comfortable silence, the kind that doesn't demand words. Then, out of the blue, she spoke again. You remind me of myself at your age. I looked at her, surprised. Really? A touch of sadness softened her smile. Curious about the world, but cautious, wanting to be seen, but afraid of being misunderstood. It's a tricky balance, isn't it? Her words resonated deeply. Yeah, it is. She reached out then, her hand resting gently over mine. The gesture was tender, almost motherly, but there was a new layer of intimacy to it, something different. You're stronger than you think, she said, her voice soft but firm, and more beautiful than you realize. I didn't know how to respond. Her words were kind, but a strange warmth spread through me. Thanks, I managed, my voice barely audible. She didn't withdraw her hand immediately, and the gentle weight of her touch sent a shiver through me. Finally, she pulled back, reaching for her mug and taking a sip as if nothing significant had just happened. I should let you get some rest, she said after a moment, standing up. But as she passed me, her hand brushed lightly against my shoulder. Good night, she murmured, her voice low. Good night, I replied, my voice a little shaky as she disappeared up the stairs. I sat there, my heart pounding, a sense that something had irrevocably shifted between us. The next day, I tried to navigate my routine as if everything were normal, but Eleanor's presence lingered like a subtle perfume. Her words, her touch, the way she had looked at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was trying to convey something profound, something unspoken but heavy with meaning. She seemed to sense my unease, catching my eye during breakfast with a knowing smile. Everything okay? She asked, echoing Dad's question from the night before. Yeah, I said quickly, looking away. But the truth was, I wasn't sure if things were okay. Something had changed, and I wasn't sure I was ready to confront it. By afternoon, I craved fresh air. Grabbing a book, I escaped to the backyard, hoping the gentle breeze would clear my head. I had barely settled into a chair when Eleanor emerged, carrying a tall glass of lemonade. Mind if I join you? She asked. I shook my head, though a knot of nerves tightened in my stomach. She sat down beside me, her presence a curious mix of comfort and unease. For a while, we engaged in light, easy conversation. But then she leaned forward, her gaze locking onto mine. I feel like there's something we need to talk about, she said, her voice soft but serious. My heart did a little jump. What do you mean? She hesitated, her expression gentle but intense. Yesterday, in the bathroom. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. You didn't, I said quickly, though the memory of her lingering gaze warmed my cheeks. A soft smile played on her lips. I think we both know that's not entirely true. I didn't know how to respond. She was right, of course. The moment had been more than just awkward. It had been charged with an unspoken tension. I just want you to know, she continued, her voice slow and deliberate, that I care about you more than you probably realize. Her words hung in the air, their weight undeniable. I looked at her, searching her face for clarity, for answers. But all I saw was a blend of vulnerability and something deeper. Something I wasn't ready to name. Eleanor's confession hung in the air like a delicate melody, both haunting and irresistible. The weight of her gaze, the vulnerability in her words, it was overwhelming, and yet, somehow, not enough. I craved clarity, but the boundaries between us had blurred. What do you mean? I finally asked, my voice barely a whisper above the rustling leaves. She hesitated, her fingers tracing the condensation on her glass. I mean that I see you. I see the person you're becoming, and I'm proud of you. But it's more than that. It's complicated. Complicated. The word echoed in my mind, heavy with implications. I didn't trust my voice, so I simply nodded, urging her to continue. When I married your father, she said slowly, her gaze distant, I didn't realize how much our family dynamic would shift me. I thought I understood what it meant to be a stepmother, but I wasn't prepared for how much I'd come to care for you. And lately, she paused, her eyes returning to mine, searching, It feels like it's shifted. Shifted how? I asked, though a part of me was afraid to hear the answer. She looked at me then, her eyes delving into mine, into something deeper, something she seemed to struggle to articulate. Into something deeper, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Something I can't quite put into words. And I don't know what to do with that. Her vulnerability was both unnerving and strangely comforting. It made me feel seen, acknowledged in a way I hadn't been before, but it also stirred a flicker of unease. Eleanor, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, she replied quickly, her tone soothing. I just needed you to know. Whatever this is, whatever it becomes, I don't want it to ruin what we have. I nodded, the knot in my chest loosening slightly. It won't, I promised. A small, tentative smile touched her lips, a smile that spoke of relief. Thank you. That means more to me than you know. The following days unfolded with a surprising normalcy. Eleanor and I slipped back into our familiar routine, though a newfound ease settled between us. The subtle tension that had once colored our interactions seemed to have faded, replaced by an unspoken understanding. One evening, as we were preparing dinner together, she turned to me with a playful glint in her eyes. Do you remember that time you tried to bake cookies and practically set off the smoke alarm? I laughed, grateful for the lightheartedness. How could I forget? You made me eat the slightly charred ones anyway. They weren't that bad, she teased, bumping my shoulder gently. Just extra crispy. Her laughter was infectious, and for the first time in days, it felt like we'd found solid ground again. Weeks melted into months, and life continued its steady march forward. Eleanor and I never explicitly revisited that afternoon in the backyard, but it had undeniably left its mark, subtly reshaping our relationship. There was a newfound depth to our connection, a quiet respect and understanding that hadn't existed before. One evening, as I was getting ready for bed, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I looked different, more confident, more sure of myself. And I realized that Eleanor had played a part in that transformation. Her honesty, her willingness to be vulnerable, had somehow given me permission to do the same. As I turned off the lights and slipped under the covers, a sense of peace settled over me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. Whatever the future held, I knew I could face it, because in some unexpected way, I wasn't alone. Eleanor and I had discovered something rare and precious, a bond that defied easy definition and grew stronger in the face of uncertainty. And for that, I was deeply grateful.